Now, this is a complete basket case. I believe this was a EMBI, completely apart. Those red handles I put on. Just trying to start some rewiring. But this is a complete basket case stripped onto the frame. Parts, more parts, and there's even more parts up here. Okay, let's get started. Just a little closer look at the battery box section. I know that this is where they used to store the battery, and going back 20 years, they were lead acids. I actually had no battery box for it, so that would, believe it or not, I did install to put the battery on top of. It's going to be lithium ion. Go with that, lighter weight, longer distance, more power. And I haven't decided yet on the voltage. I have several controllers laying around and a couple of batteries, so I'll decide on that. I might go with 72 volts. But after inspection, this is just tape. Take that off. But the pedal looks good. Well built. Shocks are still in good shape. No cracks in the frame. And I might be putting on a new seat cover. We'll see. All right. So this was a fun problem. Originally, there was a drum brake. Here's what they look like. Or band brake, whatever they call them, on the bike. I've had to switch to a disc brake for the simple reason that this motor, the wire comes out, we can't see it, but the side, you can see the wire is pointing, the power cable's pointing straight down. And on a tip for future, anybody else rebuilding these, the motor, the wires need to come out the very tip. So they would need to come out here and not out the side of the, that was interesting. Now, some of them I've seen axles where they have the option for both. Now I'm in the process of trying to rig up these two bars for holding the disc caliper. That was fun. Beginning to run the new wiring. I'm going to go with obviously the throttle motor control. This has also the fuel gauge on it and key lock. The brake, both brake engine shutoffs, lights, and I decided to go with a motor that I had pulled off my old bike. My bike, not my wife's bike. But most of it's already wired. But you'll see when I'll be facing theirs to go through it. You'll see go around the clock. Here's the phase angle that goes through the motor. Here's the key. It's red as a key ignition. I had it marked. These are to the battery, power for the controller, positive, negative. This was just a picture I used, and I actually had to figure out most of this wiring myself. This, the 5-wire is again for the motor control, for the, I believe those are the Hall sensors that it uses. Here's the brake cutoffs. I'll be putting both of the brake Wires connected to here. Throttle, the 3-wire, and here's the 3 motor lines. So begin with that, and I put some notes in here. Jen, that was my wife, on her 5-wire throttle. That is, again, that throttle that has the key ignition, the fuel gauge, and also the throttle part. All right, we'll get started on that. Here was another issue I had. I had to buy a disc brake adapter. Try to cut them. They look like this, or they can look like this. This one didn't come close. It's mostly for a regular forked bike, and this is not. And so I've tried different positions. I've tried it like the way it's supposed to go, which was like, I think like this. That didn't work. Tried it like this, like this, and the only position it would work in was right here to get the alignment right on the brake pads. So, and I'm putting an additional strap here to secure it. This was the old attachment for the drum brake, but I could not get anything to work here. So it looks like this is the best solution. We'll try that. Another item that's important is the torque arm. This is a little odd. It actually ran the brace was at the same spot for it's a fairing attachment area, but I was able to get around it. Real important. This one's nice because it's adjustable. There's several models out there, but real important to put on a torque arm, as these axles can spin if they're put under too much pressure. Wanted to get a good video of the final alignment. Looks pretty good. And I'm waiting on believe it or not, I had to get a longer brake cable. The way this cable winds around, you should buy a tandem bike brake cable, a little longer. Get it to fit. Well, it looks good. Again, another view of the torque bar on the side. So mechanically, it'll now just be a final brake cable for the rear, and then it's starting the wiring. That's gonna be fun. But it's getting there. Right now it's on about day 6 or 7. Here's a final shot of the brake, disc brake that I put on. And I did have to go with a tandem bike brake cable. It was 85 inches. I used all of the cable, all but maybe 5 inches of the 4 or 5 inches of the outer cable part of it. But the wire itself, I ended up using all of it. 85 inches. And it was odd because this was the only position, so the wire has to come in from the rear. But I got it adjusted, and it stops perfect, nice and tight. Everything seems to grab correctly. I'm gonna fish underneath. There's all the spaghetti that I'm gonna need to start wiring the power part of it. But I want to get a last look at the disc brake. Get a video of the wiring for the front and rear lights and horn with the control. What I did is put on a bike light online, and the whole
light assembly fit inside the old bike cavity perfectly. Ran the wire out the back. And the horn's also in there. This scrape was from previous accident I think the bike had. Did not do that. So it kind of covers up the middle part of that. And I tried it on. It looks pretty good. I bench tested this, the wiring. For the rear, found a nice LED bulb. Run at the proper voltage. Just positive and negative in to the bulb. And here's the control, handlebar control that I'll be putting on. What I have to do is splice in. See, I bench test this. I'm actually going to make a schematic when I'm wiring this. I mostly know it, but it's always better to look at it because this will be the negative to ground. And I'll be putting this on the switched side of the controller so that the lights and horn only operate when the key is turned on. And I know this was power going into the switch with the two controls for light and horn coming out, and they hook up to these two. And so I'll need to splice in the light part to the switch side of this control, and then the ground, oh boy, to this ground. That's why I want to make a schematic of this. Because I'm wiring it, I want to make sure it's correctly and I'm not shorting anything out. All right, so here's the work from figuring out the switch lighting for the front and rear lights. Light cable, splicing in ground. Then I figured out the green for the front light is the green hot wire. Then I have the red, which is the hot wire for the rear. I have both of those connected positive. And again, I had to hook the negative to the rear light to the negative with the front light. But that does now seem to work. And again, positive into the switch. These are splicing from this controller part. And let's see the proof. Here we go. Okay, that seems to work. And then this I know, obviously the other one is the horn. I don't need to hook that up because I know it's from the horn. So that'll go red, believe it or not, to the blue wire over here. Okay, let me write that down before I forget. Picture of what the headlight looks mounted. This is all the wiring in through this plastic fairing down through into this tunnel. So it was taking all this plastic off, fished through that plastic tunnel, and got it sorted somewhat. So now I think I'm going to quit for the day, and tomorrow I'm going to start on the wiring, final connections. So get started on the wiring, just one at a time. I'm going to start with the brake shutoffs. I have two of them, so I need to connect the two reds to yellow and the two blues to the black. Two reds to the yellow and the two blues to the black. Here's the brake shutoff at the controller. Yellow and black. There's only one of those. And I have two brake levers, so I'm going to connect both blues together to plug into the black, and connect both reds together to connect into the yellow. I am going to use these, using these plugs. So I'm using the 18 gauge
crimp ends. Just bullet. They are small enough. As you can see, I've connected both the blues together, and these are the brake cutoffs. Both of the reds together. So blues into the black and reds into the yellow. That's what it'll look like. On to the next one. So I'm gonna start on the lighting, and this is the diagram I had from the desk check and the desk test. So I need to make that, recreate that with these. This one here is for the rear light. This one is from the handlebar switch, and this is the front light. So I need to wire it to that. So I'm going to go with a new fuse. This is that's a 12 gauge wire. It's 30 amp. And one of the tips that I wanted to tell you is anything that comes out from the battery, I use the covered socket. So if you're unplugging it and the battery touches anything, it won't spark. So the bullet side always goes into the non-battery side. So again, anything coming off the battery, use the covered ends, which obviously with the other end, the bullet end would be going into the controller. Just a quick tip. So getting ready for a test. I got it. It took a couple hours. I got it all wired. This is just a cover for all that wiring, because if it bounces, there's some metal down there. So I just put a covering over all that spaghetti. And now it's reduced to the black coming out from the controller, or the ground in and the power in to both to the controller. Getting ready to test it. Hang on. So I've hooked up to a test battery, and let's just test it out. All right, that's showing voltage. That's a real good sign. Let's see if we can get the motor to work. Real good sign. Rear brake works. Now, this was the fun one. The lights and the horn. Lights. That sure is working. And horn. Okay. All right, now all I have to do is put all the fairing on and tuck everything away. So, just got the back. I'm going to go through some partial assembly. Just got the back fairing piece on. That was cracked before with the seat lock. And got the rear tail light. The wire fished through. So I just got all that attached. Got the controller attached. One of the wires tucked away with the two leads sticking out. So I spent a couple hours putting all the fairing, seat, and racks back on. Battery protector deck, wiring tucked away. And I'm going to put on the front holder. That's the last piece. It goes up here. And it almost looks like a motorbike. EMBI's coming to life after 20 years. So I got mirrors, pedals, battery install. As you can see, all I have sticking out is the fused positive and the ground, ready for the battery. Okay, I think I have, well, I have all the parts that I have on. Tightened up, rack, seat lock works. Got it wired. I'm going to run it with this test battery. It's a power tool battery, 6 amp hour, plenty of power. Let's run this for a little while.
Got the mirrors on. Oh, I do need to still adjust that front brake before I take it out. Getting ready for a test ride. Pedals are on, mirrors are on. 20-year-old bike, ready for a reawakening. So it's a success. I just took it around the block half a dozen times, and it's running great just on that power tube battery. And a couple minor adjustments. I'm going to do the brakes a little bit finer adjustment. I'm just going to put a cover for where the battery pack is. I do have a regular 72-volt battery I'm going to put in there. I've been using this to test it, but it's running fine just on that cobalt battery. So guys, here it is, resurrected after 20 years.